Hello, everyone. This is how to tackle your blindside. We are going live here in LinkedIn, going live in my Facebook group, Men's Growth Mindset, and on YouTube. This is going to be the next 45 minutes will change the way that you think, and the way that you act, and the way your brain sees the world. We're going to figure out some of these diagrams, and we're going to actually understand where the stress comes from, where all your triggers come from, and how you can actually understand your blind side, what your blind side is, and what that'll allow you to do moving forward. I'm Patrick, and I'm a men's performance coach. And what this masterclass is, you might be a bit curious what it's all about. Where does it all start, and where does it all come from? And so, I think I might just, get you a little bit curious to start with. I'm not sure if you've seen this image before. This is one of the like a diagram of one of the planes from back in World War II. And what that meant is that this was one of the planes that came back after going over a land and copying enemy fire. And and all these planes were coming back with this very similar pattern, this really, really similar pattern. And so they had this one question. They were just really curious because they wanted to bring more pilots back. They wanted to be able to save the planes and save people's lives. And so they were curious as to how are they going to solve this problem? How are they going to protect these planes even more? Which begs the question, where would you put the extra protection? Where on this plane, if all the dots are the bullet holes and all the fragments that have hit these planes that are coming back to base, where are you going to put your protection? So it really does beg the question of where is the blind side, and why am I actually doing this? If you're watching this live, type in the comments #live. If you're watching this on the replay, type in #replay. Hopefully I can see some of the comments pop up in this screen. If not, stay tuned. We've got a couple of games. This is going to be really interactive. So if you're watching it live, or if you are catching on the replay, chuck in the comments, where you're at, where you're from. If you're watching on the #replay, type in #replay, and there'll be some answers and some information and feedback that you guys are going to play. The game's only 1 or 2 minutes long, but this will allow you to actually physically understand some of these principles, because it's not just about the knowledge that we have, but how can you actually apply this stuff in your day to day. And so you might be a bit curious, why am I doing this? For what purpose am I doing this masterclass? And if I'm being really, really honest, I want to work with you long term, because I know that a blind side isn't something that just pops up and you can deal with in 45 minutes. This takes time, continuous time, to understand your blind side, create an awareness of what your blind side is. And your blind side is like, I'm not sure if you've ever seen the football, or it might be the NFL, when the quarterback or the person with the ball comes in and gets tackled from behind, and they're not even aware of the person coming from behind them. We've got so much attention, focus on one area of our lives, or one area, that we forget about everything else because we're just not consciously aware of that. And I'll show you that through these next couple of games, to be able to make you really aware of just where your blind sides are and how you can combat that and become better, how to perform at your peak. And so why am I doing this? I'm here because I want to work with you long term. I know that your problems aren't going to be solved in 45 minutes. And so at the end, I'll put a link up to work together. But in the meantime, what I want to do is actually give you value, because I could be just any other guy on LinkedIn that's doing their live and doesn't know anything and just preaches mindset. And so you might be curious, why would I trust this guy with mindset? What is it all about? And so for me, it didn't actually just start with mindset. It didn't start on LinkedIn. It didn't start with this masterclass. This was me way back when. This was me when I was knee-high to a grasshopper. My whole life, I've been overweight. I never really felt good. It was only very rarely that I did feel good, when I might have eaten some chocolate or some McDonald's, or quite often as a kid growing up, I never really felt confident. I didn't feel good. I didn't really feel good about where I was at, what I was doing, and the successes I had. And that was the process through all of primary school into high school and even through uni. I never really felt good about myself. It's a hard problem to have because quite often all we're trying to do is to feel good. It's what we chase. It might be what you feel and you see when you go and watch Netflix, or you actually play video games. It's the idea of we're chasing this ability to just feel good, to feel happy. And I didn't really have that a whole lot growing up. It wasn't until I was almost at my end of my uni degree and I was just starting to go into the workforce. A number of massive events happened in my life in terms of ending relationships and realizing that I really wasn't as happy as what I thought I was. I was starting to have everything set up, everything lined up, engineering, job, partner, except I just wasn't healthy. I wasn't fit. Didn't feel good about myself in that moment. And so I ended the relationship and just started to work myself. And working on myself meant going to the gym. What that meant for me was 3:30 a.m. wake-ups, going up, getting in early for like 8 months solid, working as hard as I could in the morning and going to work and working even harder, even further, even longer. And then after I kept going to the gym, kept working hard. I worked hard during the day because that's what engineering was. You had to work the hardest. It was who could work the most, who could be the most effective, who could actually show up for the biggest amount of time. That's what I thought was what was needed to be successful. I'd seen a lot of other people be successful in their life. And yet, through that process, I still didn't really quite feel good. I was feeling good on the process, but I still didn't really feel good until I got to the point where I'd lost 20 kilos. I was starting to earn a lot of money in my job, and I was almost like, I've got to the end goal. I've got to the achievement. I've got to where I wanted to be. And finally, I was just like, wow, I finally made it. Finally got to the top. And then I realized that that moment didn't last as long as what I thought it would. So I was looking for the next success, the next process. So in work, I looked for a different company and also pushed myself in the endurance space. I went from going to the gym to want to do a marathon, and then that ended up leading to triathlons. And so I pushed myself to go and do a 70.3, which is a half Ironman. And that half Ironman, I trained as much as what I could. I put time and effort into. I love the process. I love working hard, putting time and effort in to get better, to work onto a big goal. And it felt good to be exercising, to be free, and to start creating the momentum and pushing myself. So I got to the end of the 70.3 after a warm day down in Geelong, across the line, calves sore, sweating, absolutely exhausted, but it just felt so amazing. Felt incredible at the end of that peak. And it wasn't until the next day that started to come down. Feel good only lasted so long. And so I only had to find that next success, the next process, the next job. And so what I went to do was I was like from the half Ironman to the full Ironman. And the full Ironman, if you're not sure, is a 3.8K swim, 180K bike ride, and a 42.2 kilometer run. And I trained for that for 4 months, putting in so much time, effort, early mornings, late nights, big hours at work, 10, 12-hour days, work in the morning, work at night, grinding, working really hard. So I almost didn't feel like I was worthy of going and doing an Ironman. I didn't deserve to be there. Kept pushing, kept going, flew over to Perth. In 31-degree heat, I pushed myself to the absolute limit. The last 200 meters coming down that red carpet felt incredible. I'd achieved one of the biggest, most hardest endurance feat of any human being, the Ironman. Come across the line, high-fiving everyone, get across the line. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. This is absolutely amazing. A couple of hours later, a day or two later, it all kind of sunk in. And that feel-good thing in the moment, the feel-good moment during the training was just gone. And so what do you do then? When the feel-good feels are gone, what happens? I was like, okay, I got to go do an ultras. I went and did a 100-kilometer run. No bikes, no swimming, nothing, just a 100-kilometer run. Pushed myself to the absolute limit, and it felt good doing it. It felt amazing to be able to push myself to the absolute limit and find that peak. Only to get to the end of the race and just feel everything else fall down because I still didn't feel good. Still didn't feel like I was enough. Still hadn't reached the freedom that I was hoping to get from that. I'd achieved the success. It felt good in the moment, but I still hadn't had what I was looking for. And it wasn't until in April 2021 when I absolutely maxed out my biggest achievement in the endurance space so far. For me, that was a 24-hour run around an athletics track. For 24 hours, day and night, just keep running around this 400-meter track continuously. As the light started to wane and go into the night, everyone was telling me all the time, it was between about 2 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the morning. That is when it's the hardest. That is the point when you're going to want to quit, that you're going to want to fail. It's at that moment that anyone else will call it quits. So it came around to 1 o'clock in the morning. It was getting closer. I was unsure of what I wanted to do. My legs were absolutely sore. At this point, I'd run 100 kilometers, the furthest I'd ever run. I still had like more than 60 kilometers to go, more than a full marathon to actually achieve the success that I wanted. It was in that moment I figured out what it was all about. In that moment, I got a rev up from my crew, put my headphones in, just started to run and walk. I've been in so much pain, so much suffering on and off over the last 12 to 13 hours. I just need to keep moving. Between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock was my favorite time because it was so quiet. It was the most free I'd felt. People always ask me, what do you think about for 24 hours? What do you think about on all these long runs? Because sometimes you don't have music on these things. What is this all about? It's the ability to actually be free from your thoughts, free from your mind, free from everything else that's going on around you. It wasn't the idea of chasing success. It wasn't the achievements. It wasn't just the feel-good thing in the moment. It wasn't the instant gratification. It was the long-term perspective, that freedom from your mind. And that was the greatest moment of that entire 24 hours, was absolute freedom from anyone, any judgment, anyone else going around me. That led to the point where at the very end of the 24 hours, I was exhausted, done, out. I realized that it wasn't the successes that we had on the way, but it was the freedoms that we get in the moment, bringing it back to the now, bringing it back to the present, and the idea of being enough. So this was me at the end of 24 hours. I looked fairly good for 24 hours, but inside I was exhausted. Within about like half an hour, I was like head on the pillow. I was like almost collapsing in the car. Lucky someone else drove me home. Because what we really want is it goes through this process, goes through these 3 levels. What we really want to do, everyone who's probably on this call, who's probably an achiever, wants to create success, wants to get the most out of themselves, which is why you're here to better yourselves, really only wants to feel good. All you want to do is to feel good. And quite often that starts when you're watching Netflix, when you're at home in the morning. It's all that instant gratification stuff. All you want to do is to feel good. And then after you realize that just feeling good isn't the thing that you want, you see other people who feel better, who are happier because they chase success. What society tells you to do, to go get the job, to go push yourself, to find the next level. The next phase that we go through is the idea of success and achievement. The next phase that you're chasing for is to feel good, success, and the achievement. But it's not what you really want. Success, it helps you to get to the moment, but at the moment where you absolutely achieve the thing you want, everything else falls apart. World champions, people at their peak fall down. That's why it's really, really hard to go back-to-back on our sports teams. So what is it that we're really chasing in this process? What we're really chasing is the freedom, being enough. That is the 3 layers that everyone's chasing. And there's a couple of like fallacies that we always keep pushing ourselves through that stop us from actually achieving the thing that we want. Because what happens is, first biggest misconception, the thing that we all kind of believe is that we've got to work really, really hard. We've got to be a slave to the man. We've got to work and push ourselves to the absolute limit, day in, day out. It's what I experienced in engineering. It's what I experienced in the endurance space, is that by feeling good was pushing yourself the whole time. And that was the thing that we felt was the thing we had to, was the only option to be successful. It was the only way to have the success, and the success to then feel good. Thing is that when you really delve into the depths of success, when you delve into the business world and the people that create the most of their life, it isn't about how hard they work, but about how do they position themselves, where they put their focus, where they put their attention. Where is it they can create the biggest leverage on the way that they think, on the biggest actions, be able to help them feel good, but also create the success in their lives. So it's not necessarily how hard you work. It's not about just working harder. You got to direct your attention, your focus to where you want to be. The Drake, the no. What happens is a lot of the most successful people in the world are great givers. They love to give to people. They love to give to everyone else around them. Time, money. The most successful people are big givers, giving of value, giving of time. What people find it really hard is the ability to be able to receive it within yourself. Okay? The acceptance, to feel like you are worthy, to feel like you are enough. It makes it really hard to feel good when we're not able to receive it even from ourselves. To give ourselves gratitude, to give ourselves like feeling good, because we want to just give it to everyone else. And in the way of ecology, we've got ourselves and others. And quite often, we always put others first without actually looking after ourselves. What people don't realize is it's not about whether you give more or whether you receive more. It becomes a cycle. And as long as you keep giving, at some point, you'll probably receive. But when you're open to receiving, you've got to be able to accept that graciously, humbly. The second thing that the achievers and people that are successful struggle with is, when I get there, then I'll be happy. When I create that success, then I'll be happy. In that future moment in time, then I'll be happy. Achievers really look into the future. They put a lot of value on themselves in the future. When you get to the end of the Ironman, when you get to the end of your job, when you get the next promotion, we put so much focus on the future goal, the future aspect, the future success, that we forget about the now. It's a thing that stops us to being present, to being enough. There's these misconceptions of that only when I do this, then I can be happy. Only when I do this, you put so much pressure on the future as opposed to the now. And so it's these 3 misconceptions. It's these 3 things that hold you back from having the success that you want, to feeling good, and to actually having the freedom that you want. Because all these are actually trying to do the same thing, except this is the most resourceful way to do it. So you might be curious, how is it that we can overcome these misconceptions? How do we know how to focus? How do we push through the stress and the pressure of this? We're going to go through a quick game. This will might take 1 or 2 minutes, and it's really, really simple math, like probably, early primary school math. So if you can't do quick math, maybe this isn't the game for you, but it's just a lot of like simple addition or subtraction. Just those 2 simple functions. I'm going to ask you a question at the end of this, and I'd love for you to put the answer. So if you're watching this live, putting #live in the comments. Also, as you get the answer to the question, drop it in at the end of this. I'd be curious to see where your focus, where your attention goes for this. And so this is a simple training journey. I'll tell you a story about John, because I used to have to train all the way up to Ballarat in boarding school. And there's always these people who get on and off the train. So one day I left from Melbourne, and this man, John, hopped on at the same time. And we were both on the train, and we were looking, going all the way up to Ballarat. And I reckon when we got on the train, there was about 100 people on the train. There's 100 people in the carriages that we could see. And so as we left Melbourne, we went all the way heading up to Ballarat. 10 more people got on at Footscray. And then we left Footscray and we went to Sunshine. And at Sunshine, 15 more people got on the train. 50 more people got on the train at Sunshine. And then we left from Sunshine to Deer Park. And at Deer Park, 10 more people got on, but 5 people got off here. Not quite as busy a suburb, but there's still enough people getting on and off. And then it went from Deer Park to Ardeer. 5 people got on and 10 people got off. And then through that process, we kept going from Ardeer to Caroline Springs, which is just up the road. A little bit more of a busy area. So 20 more people got on and 5 people only got off here. Then we left from Caroline Springs up to Rockbank. And at Rockbank, 2 people got on and 17 people got off. And then went from Rockbank to my hometown, my OG Melton. And 25 people got on, but 50 people got off because everyone was coming from the city. And then at Melton, the next train stop from there is Bacchus Marsh. We get more and more rural, more and more country, more kangaroos, more cows, more greenery in this thing. And at Bacchus Marsh, 12 people got on and 7 people got off. 12 people got on, 7 people got off. And then just as we're reaching Ballarat, we got to Balan. And at Balan, only 4 people got off at Balan. And we started to pull into Ballarat. We got into Ballarat, and I'd be curious, when we got to Ballarat, how many stops were there between Melbourne and Ballarat? Chuck it in the comments below if you're watching this on the hashtag replay. How many stops were there? Don't cheat and go back and watch the replay. Don't count all the stops. You will probably be focusing on how many people got on and off the train. I personally tried to influence you to look at and count the numbers on and off. All you really needed to do was to just add 1 every time there was a station. You might have been smart enough to realize that this was a game that you might have played when you were younger, and you might have been counting the stations on your hands and trying to do the quick math in your head. I'll tell you the answer later on. But what I want you to focus on is that where you put your questions, where you put your attention, will allow you to create the focus of getting the right answer and the right outcome that you want, putting the world in the direction and the purpose that you want to. So this game really highlights that this is just really simple math. Anyone can do this. Most people can do this. I'm guessing if you're watching this, this is probably something that is quite achievable for you, but our mind can only focus on one thing at a time. Our mind has this RAS in our brain here, which is like our reticular activation system, which isn't something that you need to remember for a test that we're doing later on, but our RAS highlights to our brain where we want to put our focus, what we're going to go to. Are we looking at just red cars? Are we looking at pink elephants? You can't not think about the thing without thinking about it. I can't say think of a red car, and you can't not think of a red car without thinking of a red car. So it's all about where you put your focus, which is more of like a conscious brain thing. The second issue and the second limiting aspect of our brain comes from this little game, this little game to play that you guys can do. It'll only take you about a minute. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these words up on the screen. You've got 30 seconds. 30 seconds to remember as many as possible. Don't cheat on this one. Actually try to remember what this is. At the end, I'm going to get you to write down as many of these as possible in 30 seconds. And I'll be curious to know what your answer is. How many you go? So what we're going to do is the time will start now. 15 words will pop up on the screen. I want you to remember any. Don't write any down. Just try to remember as many as you possibly can right now. And you've got 30 seconds to remember as many as you can, starting from now. Don't lose your focus. Keep remembering all these words. They're really simple words. 5, 4, 3, 2, That's it. How'd you go? I'd love for you to chuck into the comments how many of these words you actually got. How many of these words were you actually able to remember without cheating, without manipulating the system? On the screen, there was 15 words. Type in the comments if you got 15. I'd be very surprised how many people got over 12. Type it into the comments. How many people got over 10? How many got over 8? How many got over 6? How many people got over 5? And you might be curious what your number means to the number that you got. Quite often, our mind can only hold so much information at a time because we get like 64 million bits of data from all our senses, from all our memories, from everything that's coming in every single second. 64 million bits of information that we've got to process and deal with. And so in that, our unconscious mind in here, in order to create the focus, it just throws a whole bunch of extra stuff out. You just can't process everything. So we can only hold 7 bits of information plus or minus 2 at any one point in time. So everyone got between probably 9 and 5 words. Really, really simple task, but it shows that your mind's valuable. Your mind can't do everything. It misses things. You can't get everything that's going on in the world. And that was just in 30 seconds. Yeah, if you had a 60 seconds, if you had 90 seconds, you might be able to remember more. But imagine that. This is just words on a screen, let alone the cars coming in, the family, the friends, everything else that's going on in your world, how to process everything to get the outcome and get the direction that you want. Your mind isn't as good as what you think, but that doesn't mean it's not impossible to move forward. Everything becomes possible when you're able to direct the right attention. And so you might be curious, one of the reasons why you're here is you're probably quite stressed at work. You're probably quite busy. A lot of your time is taken up. It can get really overwhelming. And so you might wonder, when is enough stress too much stress? A couple of the biggest triggers to know when your stress is coming up is you feel overwhelmed, have trouble sleeping, you find it hard to focus. You might be more hungry, you might be less hungry. You feel like this brain and just one more bit of information will just throw you over the edge. You're trying to process all this data and just trying to push it out, trying to get away from all this stuff. You might, at the end of the day, go to alcohol. You might try to get an out, and that's something unhealthy. As the stress builds up. And there's nothing wrong with stress because a lot of people have these really stressful jobs, and that's what you get paid your money for. Usually the more money you have, the more responsibility, and more responsibility means more stress, which means dealing with more people. And so we can't really remove the amount of stress that you deal with on the day-to-day. What people don't realize is that sometimes the stress can trigger us from past memories and things in the day-to-day that we're not even really aware of. Like, how often have you been driving in a car and someone like loses their mind at someone who cuts them off or who comes out too quickly? How often do you look out and see what someone else is having for dinner and you're like, oh my God, why the hell didn't I order that? Small things become bigger issues. We end up putting our focus onto things that are triggering us that we're not really dealing with. We're not able to process in that period of time. We're not able to deal with these stresses as they're coming up because the emotions that we keep sitting in more of the time. One of the biggest reasons to know that you're triggering stress is that time slows down. How often have you been at your computer at work and it's like 2:30, you're about to leave at 3, and you start scrolling on Instagram? You're like, I can scroll Instagram for the last 30 minutes of work. Yeah, just to get out the door and make it feel like I'm successful. You're like, oh, it's been 30 minutes for sure. You look at your phone, you're like, it's been 3 minutes. Time drags out when you're more stressed. A lot of the negative thoughts, time drags out even more over time because you're so present to the stress, you're so present to being hungry, you're so present to the pain that's going on. Time seems to take longer. It's like stretching. Stretching is another one thing. Sometimes when I'm stretching and it's like a minute timer, I'm like, geez, this feels like it's been going for half an hour. Or cold showers, cold plunge, because you're so focused, you're so in the moment that time almost stands still. So how do we actually put more focus into this? It's like you've got to be more aware of the things that are triggering you, the things that are causing you stress, and figuring out how to process them. And so there's 4 levels and layers of this, of how you move through the stress and how you create better outcomes for yourself. So where it all starts is with awareness. It starts with the awareness that you're in stress. It's the awareness of actually figuring out that you're being stressed by the information that's going on around you. When you realize that you're being stressed, you feel like there's the lack of sleep, you feel the pressure, you feel the overwhelm. You're just going to be really, really aware of what's happening and that you're in that feeling, in that moment. And that awareness is one of the biggest and the first steps you need to take, is to aware that you're struggling, to aware that you might need help or you might need to take a break. The more you become aware of these patterns and these triggers that happen continuously, the easier it is to start to realize that you need to start to put your focus somewhere else. And so quite often after you get awareness, you got to realize that there's got to be some sort of level of honesty. Whether that's self-honesty or the people around you. It's having the honest conversation with yourself or the people around you. Hey, I'm feeling stressed. There's been a lot of times where I feel stressed, I felt unappreciated, or I didn't really appreciate it at work. And I've actually gone up to my boss and I've asked, hey, this isn't actually how I feel. This isn't what I want to achieve. I've got to be honest with how I feel and how you're approaching this situation. It's these tough conversations that we obviously don't have. We've got to be honest with ourselves to know that we're struggling, that we're overwhelmed. One of the biggest things as engineers in construction is that we push ourselves to the absolute limit. We go harder, further, stronger. It's just within our nature that we want to push ourselves. And we don't realize that at the end of, say, an occupation, which sometimes goes for 12, 13 days, we're absolutely exhausted and we don't know how we got through it. But if only we'd spoken up and said, hey, look, I'm being stressed. We don't want to appear weak. We don't want to appear like we're struggling. We don't want to feel unworthy of the job and the paycheck that we get. We just want to feel like we're enough. And at the end of that success, then we'll be free. So unless we have these honest conversations with ourselves, we can't move past this. The next phase of this is you actually, as soon as you become aware of it, as soon as you get honest with yourself that this is a problem, it becomes the ability to regulate. To be able to regulate your emotions, to regulate your stress, to regulate how you push yourself and allow yourself to go through this process. When you're able to regulate in this moment, you're able to process how much information is coming in and how much information is going out. You can understand how to regulate your emotions of the stress, of anxiety, of the things that are going on, heavy breathing. After you're able to be able to process and work through these emotions, you can then start to put more focus onto your logic brain. Quite often, we're unconsciously going into like a feeling state. We're not aware of the anger or the feelings or the emotions that are coming up, and we don't know how to sit in them, to feel into them, to allow them to express out when it's the right time. And then you kind of get stuck in this phase for a little bit. Awareness, honesty, regulate. Awareness, honesty, regulate. It's really hard to push out of this point because we're so hard trying to figure out what's actually wrong with us. Trying to figure out why is it that I can't deal with this stress? Why am I not strong enough? Why am I putting so much pressure on myself? Why is this job so hard? It's only at the point when after you regulate, you realize that you actually want to improve. You actually want to break the cycle. Because quite often, it goes to this pattern here. You actually want to improve and you want to actually make yourself better. And so, like I said at the very start, this takes time. To be aware of everything that's happening. You get 64 million pieces of information at any 1 second for your unconscious and conscious mind to process. Quite often, of those 64 million, we can only focus on plus or minus 7 pieces of data. To then have honest conversations with ourselves and to then regulate and understand where we're at makes it really hard for us to process what we want to do. And so in order to create more focus and more direction in what you're doing in the day-to-day, if you're watching this and you feel like, hey, I'm sick of this cycle, I'm sick of trying to chase this success to just feel good more often, I would highly recommend come and book in a focus call with me. We're going to sit down for 45 minutes and figure out where it is you actually want to improve. What's the goal? What's the success that you actually want? So often people want to focus on their goals to create that success in their lives, but they don't really know what the success means for them. They don't know where to put their focus. They don't know how they want to improve. One of the biggest things I hear from guys in like a personal development space is they're like, my personal development is in work. My personal development is at the gym, being more physically fit, as opposed to actually understanding that dealing with the things the day-to-day, the ability to communicate, the ability to be able to have conversations with your partner, with people at work, the ability to be able to get through the biases, the stories that we tell ourselves every single day, and to move past it so we're not just creating an awareness of the shitty feeling and actually allow us to regulate it and improve ourselves moving forward. So book in a call on patrickfocus.com. And you better find a time over the next couple of days, availability for you guys to check it out and see how you go. Lastly, you might be wondering, what are some of the answers to the questions that we've gone through over the last little while? And it comes back to this one. Where would you put the extra protection? Where would you put the extra protection? What people didn't realize, and when I first saw this diagram, I was like, you got to put the protection around the parts that we know, the parts that we know that are getting broken, because they're the bullet holes. We know that that's where the attention is. What we often forget is the blind sides that we have. The pool of planes that come back with this pattern are all the planes that were successful, not the planes that were unsuccessful, ones that didn't achieve the outcome. And so quite often, if we focus on the thing that is in front of us instead of the things that we can't see, we don't actually achieve the outcome. So if you're playing along at home, one of the best places to actually put the protection is in the white areas where there isn't the red dots. In the plane in the middle, on the propellers in the front of the plane. That's where the protection, extra protection, should have been put. Because what you want to do is protect the things that are going to cause the biggest leverage to things that you can't actually see, that maybe you're not consciously aware of. Second, that if you're playing along at home for the V-line game of the train, there were 9 stops in between Melbourne and Ballarat, and there was 131 people who got on and off at the end who got off at Ballarat. What I'm trying to highlight to you is that one of the biggest ways to grow, the biggest ways to create success and achievement and like freedom from what's actually happening to be enough is to get rid of the stories, the things that we're not aware of in our day-to-day that are stopping us and holding us back from actually feeling good. So if something that you want to improve on, you want to actually get better on, if any of these bits of information has cleared something up for you or it's got you at least really curious, book in for your free call on patrickfocus.com. Anyone who sees this is free to book in, and I will see you on the call. It's Patrick from Always Go Far. So remember, one of the biggest things about a blindside is that we don't know what we don't know. One of the biggest things to get over is your ego, the ability to say, I'm okay to ask for help. So Patrick signing out, always go far.